Six Rotations is back, and it's conference play. We are filled with polls this episode. I'm Daniel Gilman. He's Mick Haley, and we're brought to you, as always, by SNA Sports, better equipment for a better game. And Mick, the conference season is among us. Not too many top 10 shakeups on that opening weekend. A lot of our parity filled with the teens really separated themselves with a few upsets as Creighton and Kansas and Ohio State and Kentucky all fell to start conference play. But before we get to the polls, Mick, I want to know from your perspective, do you feel like this season has gone a little differently than what you've expected, or is it more of the same?
Well, I expected maybe the level to be down a little bit because of the loss of some of the fifth or sixth year players we had last year. We still have a high level of play. The most significant thing to me, though, is that the bottom half of the teams, we have 334 some NCAA Division I teams. The bottom half is significantly improved. There is not a team out there that can't beat you on any given night. And there's not a team that doesn't play hard. I have not seen any whitewashes, any of the kinds of matches where you go, ho hum, let's just get out of here. Everybody has got an arm. Everybody has got a good bro. The setters are much improved. The quality of play all the way down is much, much better, which means our game is healthy and it's going to continue to grow and get better at the top level, in my opinion.
I think the SEC has shown to be one of those conferences that's going to have competitive matchups every single time they come out. Georgia beat Georgia Tech, took Florida to 5. Auburn took Florida to 5. We had some great weekend matchups. I agree. I think that there are some conferences like the Big Ten that are feeling very top heavy, as you know, like Wisconsin and Nebraska swept through their opponents this weekend. But let's get to our top 5, because it's the same 5 teams, but a little bit of a shakeup there. We've got Wisconsin, who swept through Northwestern. They had a record crowd. Nebraska looked really solid. Could definitely make an argument for them in the 1 spot again, as they swept Ohio State and Minnesota, 2 very competitive matchups. And then you see Stanford bump up. Stanford's going to have a really good week for ranking purposes, right? We're going to really find out a lot about them, as Stanford will take on undefeated Arizona State on Friday night. There's a lot of really fun matchups this weekend, Mick, as Florida 4, Louisville 5. Without Stuckey, the Gators are looking a little bit worse for wear, but Lauren Muff, the grad senior transfer out of Flagler College, carried them through a couple 5-set wins.
Well, I think you're right about that. Florida's looked shaky, but not bad. They look shaky because they played some 5-game matches against teams that we expect them to maybe dominate a little bit more. But so, you know, Nebraska is playing without their left side. They've got Batenhorst in there now, and she was a starter before. So they're loaded.
No Krause.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I feel like maybe the poll isn't giving enough credit to Nebraska, because they're performing it even with injuries at a really high level. If it were me, I'd have them on top of the rung, and I'd probably have Stanford second, just on the quality of players and that sort of thing. And I'd have Wisconsin third, and I'd probably have Louisville fourth now that Stuckey's gone, and Florida fifth. But that's just my feeling, looking at who they've played, what's happened to their team. And mark this, injuries are going to make a difference. So whether the poll says they're not going to take injuries into consideration or not, I am, because I want to know who's going to win at the end.
Well, lucky enough, we have a new set of polls. Now, there are 2 new ranking systems that have dropped this past weekend. The first one comes every year. The committee, the same NCAA selection committee that chooses the top 16 teams and where everyone will lie in December, they've released their top 10 poll. The next one will come just before Halloween on October 29th. So we'll talk about that poll right after we get through the AVCA top 25. And then Lee Feinswag with Volleyball Magazine has finally answered everybody's prayers to have a media poll. And we've been waiting for any sort of media rankings. So what Lee has put together are a dozen of the brightest minds. I think it's 12, maybe 10 people. I think it's 12 that all voted, including yourself and myself. So a top 16 will come out every Monday on Volleyball Magazine's X page. We will also repost it. So Mick and I will go over some of our big selections and what that top 16 poll looks like, as of course there are 16 teams that will host. But let's go through some of these weekend matchups. Now, conference play makes things a little bit easier for us. We're not as scrambled. We don't have to go all over with all of these crazy top 10, top 15 matchups, but we can keep you apprised on what went on. I mentioned Florida's weekend. Louisville swept Syracuse, forced to 4 at home against Boston College, which kind of keeps them on that 4-5 spot, at least in my book, and the committee has them at 5. Just a little bit
but Jason Kennedy's Boston College team is a team that won the second tournament last year, and they've come in this year with an experienced veteran crew, and they seem to be getting better every week, and they're going to play in that tough ACC. So it'll be interesting to see how they do against some of these other teams.
Stanford swept Cal on Tuesday, swept Colorado over the weekend. Wisconsin swept Indiana, won their 20th straight Big Ten win, which is unbelievable to think about, beat Northwestern as well. And then Nebraska. And I want to, dive in here with Nebraska because it was a lopsided showing against Ohio State earlier in the week. And then the matchup with Minnesota, this was something I was able to kind of dive into a little bit after my workday was done on Sunday. There was an unbelievable point at 23-all in that Minnesota third set. You really felt like the Golden Gophers were going to force a fourth, potentially get things a little bit more interesting on what felt like a really quiet day, for Nebraska. They hit under 250. The blocks were there. Their leading blocker and scorer only had 13 kills in Murray. But Bergen Riley steps up, and there was an ace that looked to fall, and then Nebraska saved it right next to the scorer's table. The overpass somehow fell down, just one of those breaks that always seems to go the host's way, and it was just one of those situations. It turns it into match point. Nebraska finishes it in 3. How about this? UNL, one of only 2 teams in the top 20, in the top 10 in hitting and opponent hitting. Can you guess who the other team is? This was a good one from Cheese Trader on X.
No, I can't guess.
Okay, top 10 in hitting and opponent hitting. The other one, Arizona State. And so with Arizona State, we're going to show you our top 25 here. They creep in to the top 25 for the first time at 25. So Auburn, Kentucky, Ohio State all lose, all stay in the top 25. Kansas as well, and Creighton falls a couple spots down to 16. But we want to show you all of this because we've got so many polls to reveal. But Arizona State, Mick, will battle Stanford on Friday. That's just one of our top 3 or 4 marquee matchups of the weekend. But now that we can see the rest of this top 10, where do you sit with where Oregon, Washington State, Pitt, BYU, Texas lie there? Because we've got BYU against Texas twice, Thursday and Friday.
Yeah, so I actually have Washington State 6th. I think they're playing at such a high level right now. If they stay healthy, they're really going to be trouble. And Oregon 7th, and they're going to see each other in the conference. So that's a great place to have both of those two.
They're gonna see each other on Sunday.
Yeah, and so that's a great way to put those two. I have BYU actually, and I was a big Pittsburgh fan, if you remember the first 2 or 3 weeks. But I don't know if Pitt can score the ball well enough. So I have BYU ahead of Pitt, and I have Pitt 10th actually, and Texas 9th. And I'll tell you about that. If Texas fixes the back row setting, the setting behind the setter, they fix that so Asia O'Neal and Molly Phillips can start swinging again, and they can score there. They move right up and challenge that top 5 in talent. But if they don't fix it, they're well placed right now.
Texas has won 66 straight home Big 12 matches and will face a newcomer in the Big 12 in BYU, who beat Pitt, whose only loss this year is to Washington State. And Mick, how can we forget? We're 10 minutes in and I've buried the lead. We've got a great interview on the back end of this episode. Oh my goodness, terrible. Erin Livingston, the standout outside hitting superstar for BYU, will join us and talk about her trip to Austin this upcoming weekend. Got to find a way maybe to put that back in the beginning for all you fans watching, but oof, that's a big miss for me. But that's going to be a really fun matchup. We had a great chat with Erin. I think this is what we've been waiting for when it comes to these conference realignment situations. We want a team like BYU to really be challenged. And of course, they lost last year to San Diego and USD won the conference. That wasn't the same as going through the gauntlet of going to Texas twice, of facing a top 25 Kansas team, a top 30 Iowa State team, Baylor, Houston, UCF. This is going to be a really tough run for BYU. The question is, Mick, do you think that they have enough horses to kind of keep up? Now, they swept Houston on Wednesday. They swept Baylor on Saturday. That's 2 top 25 wins. BYU is the only team in the nation to have already 2 top 25 conference wins.
Yeah, and I watched them play Washington State, and Washington State dismantled them in sets 2, 3, and 4. So I've seen them at their best, and I've seen them when they faced a team that really got after them. You know, Livingston in her interview, if you watch the interview and listen to it, she's a little bit fearless. She just wants to play, and she wants to play against the best. She gets 4.5 kills per set. So I think a ticket to either of these matches in Austin this weekend is well worth the money because it's going to be fun.
Thursday, 9 o'clock Eastern on FS1, Friday at 8 Eastern on Longhorn Network. And I know, you guys are already going to jump in my comments. I guess technically Nebraska has 2 top 25 conference wins, but it is a disgrace that the coaches voted Ohio State to stay in the top 25. You're 3-7. Your best win is maybe the 80th RPI team, and you're going to put Ohio State and Kentucky to stay in the top 25. Both teams that have been decimated at Lincoln, both teams that really have not shown much, but what say la vie. Now, I do want to talk a little bit about the SEC. Before I get there, Mick, a little bit of a wrap up on the ACC. Pittsburgh swept through Duke and UNC. But the same thing happens right year after year. We're just going to wait until Pitt, Georgia Tech, and Louisville play each other. And until then, it doesn't seem like the ACC is going to have more than 3 teams in the tournament.
Well, they might have 4, but they're going to have 3 that can challenge, I think. And that's the big thing. When you get to the SEC, though, you've got some real talking to do because they have now come of age, and there are some teams that you've got to deal with. So I'll let you lead back into the SEC.
Let's do it, right? SEC talk. Florida's at 4. Tennessee is at 12. Arkansas is at 14. So 3 teams in the top 15 for the SEC. And then you throw Kentucky and Auburn also in the top 25. Tennessee, they are a team that fans are clamoring to get them into the top 10, clamoring for them to get a little bit more respect. Of course, they took Wisconsin to 5 in that matchup in the pre-conference season. They had a great run through pre-conference play. They swept Missouri on Wednesday. And then, Mick, for the first time since 2010, Tennessee went into Lexington, Kentucky, and beat Kentucky. They hadn't beaten the Wildcats since 2016. They hadn't beaten them in Lexington since 2010. And so with Tennessee and Arkansas, 2 teams that I feel like maybe people don't necessarily know much about them, where do you feel like we will get the best learning lesson from them? Now, we're going to have Auburn against Arkansas this week, Wednesday on SEC Network. But aside from that matchup, who do you feel like will be the true barometer when they play each other, or maybe Florida, or what do you think?
Well, I think, yeah, Florida. See, if Rutherford doesn't play for Kentucky, then it's not a match that surprises you. Kentucky is 3-7, and Rutherford didn't play this last weekend, and so they can't score enough points either. And Rutherford gets all the sets when they can score. So if Kentucky can't fix that, those matchups with Kentucky are not going to be as legitimate as they have been in the past. But I'll tell you what, Tennessee is so athletic that you want them to play Florida. You want to see that match. You want to see them against Arkansas is not big, but they're very well coached. They're dynamic on the outside with the little kids that really, really spank the ball out there. And that's a team that's coming on. we find out when you play Auburn if Auburn's real or not. You watched Auburn have a chance to beat Florida the other night and would not swing on match point 3 times. That's not a team that I can vote for when they won't go for it. And they were playing it way too safe, and they had a chance to win and didn't go for it. I just don't understand that, and I don't understand if that was a coaching decision or a player's decision. But you're not in the huddle, so you don't know. It's just the end result wasn't very good for them because they lost.
Auburn led 12-9 in that 5th set. Georgia led 7-3 in the 5th set. So the Gators are just hanging in there. They're now 5-1 in 5-set matches. Kennedy Martin is just leaps and bounds better than a lot of these teams, just single-handedly. And that's what we saw with the Auburn-Florida matchup. Meanwhile, Anna Kate Fitzpatrick transferred from Penn State, went back to her home state in Florida. She can serve better than any player that I've seen that is playing right now in college athletics. So that's the thing where it's like, when you get AC Fitzpatrick on that service line, took him from 7-3 to 7-7 in that 5th set, 2 aces, did it again with an epic ace at 10-9. So it's just one of those things where Florida, I think, still is the favorite in the conference, but I'm looking at Tennessee's schedule, Mick. They're going to play Mississippi State, Ole Miss, Alabama, LSU, the next 4 matchups, all bottom 50 teams. Then you get Auburn and Kentucky again in Knoxville, both of them. But you've got to go all the way down to November for when they go to Gainesville. So that's a long ways away for us to kind of hope that Tennessee avoids big upsets. That's what's dangerous about playing in a conference like that, because any of those teams could upset you. It's conference rivalries.
Yeah, I think Wisconsin's in the same place in the Big Ten. They don't play anybody until October 21st. When I say anybody ranked in the top 10. And so they're going to cruise along whatever place they're at. People are just going to keep them there. They have to battle the upset bug also of being complacent, waiting for those good matches to come back again. So Tennessee, Wisconsin may be in a similar situation, but I don't think that's the case for Arkansas. They're excited. They're up there now. They're gaining some support. Tennessee's gaining some support. Georgia Tech is the bubble team as far as I'm concerned. They have to either move forward or they're going to move backward. They can't just be where they are. They've got to get better to hold that spot and to challenge in the ACC. So, and the team that 2 teams, I think, in the Big 12 that I talked about one earlier, Houston, but the other one's Kansas. Kansas got 3 outsides. They keep rotating them. They seem to be able to get 2 of them that are on at certain times. They're a team, and they play in that small facility that, kind of like Gregory and some of these other facilities we're seeing, gives them a little bit of an advantage at home and a real special feeling. So those are teams that you can watch. And the middle of the Big 12, the middle of the SEC, all good volleyball this year.
I got to see Kansas firsthand this past weekend. Cam Turner, left-handed setter, one of the best setters in the conference. But I'm not quite sure that Coach Bouchard knows what he wants to do with all of that talent. Caroline Bien, superstar standout freshman of the year in the conference, led Kansas to the Sweet 16 2 years ago. She's playing back row, 3 rotations, getting maybe 1 kill per set. And then they'll throw her in late, and Texas Tech had a reverse sweep on Friday. Kansas restored order on Saturday. I'm a little weary on the Jayhawks until they start to figure out a little bit more of the roles of some of those athletes. Meanwhile, there was some great attendance this weekend, and I'm going to get to the top 10 right here, but I do want to give some shout outs to record-breaking crowds. Over 7,300 in Eugene, Oregon. I hope they break that on Sunday, hosting Washington State. And then Michigan had over 6,500 in the Chrysler Arena, spoiled by Michigan State, though. And then Northwestern had over 4,000 in their record-breaking crowd against Wisconsin. Now, Mick, let's talk about the top 10. I want to know, from this poll, do you think that the committee has any predispositions? And so we've got Wisconsin, Nebraska, Florida, Stanford, Louisville. Nothing crazy there. Similar to you, Washington State and then Oregon, BYU and then Texas. It's awesome that we're going to get 6 versus 7, 8 versus 9 this weekend. But then Minnesota comes in at 10. Now, the rankings did come out before the matchup of Minnesota and Nebraska. But Golden Gophers, it's been a weird run for Keegan Cook. I think he'd rather be disrespected than continually put on this pedestal that their team is going to be good.
I think Minnesota continues to kind of show me they want to play as underdogs. They don't want to play as champions. They only seem to get after it after they're down, and then they come back a lot. And I kind of thought that was the way the Washington teams played in the past a little bit too. So I'm not sure that's right, but I'm used to Minnesota coming out and bringing the heavy hammer with those outside hitters, getting after you and being all serious business. This is a different team. They're laughing a lot. They're doing a lot of different things. They Landfair goes along, has a great match until it gets into the 20s. She gets aced twice. Stuff like that is not what I saw from Minnesota in the past, and this is a talented team. So I want them to step up and make somebody fear them. I don't see them really creating the kind of fear that I think the Minnesota crowd's used to coming into the gym and seeing. The players seem to be, I think Chefmaster's better. I would say that. I think she's been delivering a lot better, but it just doesn't seem to be the intensity that we've seen in the past from Minnesota.
I think that the consensus is you kind of snub the team from being in the top 10 there. You throw Minnesota in if you're the committee. Where's Pitt? Where's Tennessee? Those are two teams that are certainly deserving. And so while we sit here in poll talk, our little poll corner, let's go ahead and look at the first ever volleyball media poll, which was voted on by 12 media members, including yourself, myself, Lee Feinswag. We've got Anne-Marie Anderson, Emily Eamon, Dennis Punzel with Wisconsin, a handful of other notable standout volleyball minds. Let me go through the rest of the voters here. Ed Strong, who does the tweeting for Volleyball Magazine. Michaela Chester, who's the voice of volleyball on NCAA.com. I don't know if you saw, Mick, she now has her own 6 rotation segment, which I thought was funny. We got
that is funny.
Arnold with the Nebraska Illustrated, Sam Gore, broadcaster, Shelby Coppage, broadcaster, Fran Flory as well. So that's the 12 voters for this top 16. Let's look at it here. And Mick, I know we both had Nebraska 1. They got 4 first place votes. Wisconsin takes the top billing. Stanford goes up to 3, Florida 4, Louisville 5, same 5 that everyone has. And then, as you see here, Texas down to 10 with Pittsburgh up at 9.
Yeah, and I think the concept of the poll is really good because it's 16 and there are 16 seeds. So that's why I like the poll, because when you think about this, you don't think about teams, you think about who do you think deserves the right to host. And you get down to 16 and you say, Creighton, are they going to host again this year? Well, is Sis going to be healthy? Because they don't win if she and Martin aren't healthy and play. So then you're starting to look at the other teams just ahead and just behind them, and it gets to be pretty exciting. But I think the coaches in that poll got the top 10 pretty close, I think.
Now, you mentioned Creighton. I want to talk about this. Xavier was 0-23 all time against the Blue Jays and stuns them in 5 sets on Saturday. So their first win in 24 all-time meetings, but they hang on here. Now, I want to tell you, and let's go full disclosure here. I'm going to give you my top 16. I had Nebraska, Wisconsin, Stanford. I put Washington State at 4 with Florida at 5. I did mine as a little bit more of a looking forward, right? Like, how much is Florida going to improve without Stuckey? Where are they going to be in? So I've got Washington State ahead of them. Oregon 7 with Louisville 6. Then BYU, Texas, Pitt. I got Georgia Tech, Tennessee there. I did put Creighton at 13 because I think Sis is going to come back. But now this is where there's a discrepancy between mine and the consensus poll. I put Purdue at 16 because I think that the combination of Chicoine and Hudson will carry them enough. And the fact that the Big Ten is so top heavy, it'll really be, in my mind, between Penn State and Purdue. And so that'll be a fun matchup when those two tangle. Penn State finally saw Jess Merzick, the Michigan transfer, step up this weekend. They swept Northwestern and Rutgers. She had 36 kills, 18 in each match for the Player of the Week nom in the Big Ten. Now, Mick, what was your top 16, at least comparatively to the overall poll?
Well, I think I had the same 16. I did, except that I didn't have Creighton.
Not the same.
And just that's the difference, because it's just too many times. And with you putting Washington State up, I learned my lesson with Washington State. I'm excited that they're at 7th or 6th. I think they've earned that right. But every time I put them higher, they always do the old spinneroo and lose. So I'm not going there. If Washington State earns that 4, they get it as far as I'm concerned. But they got to beat some more people.
Yeah, great matchups this weekend. Before I get to that, I want to talk a little bit on the West Coast. Santa Barbara, who had the big upset earlier this year. Was it Iowa State that they beat? I think so. They beat Long Beach, first win in Long Beach since 2011. So UC Santa Barbara escaped UC San Diego in 5. They start undefeated. USC beat UCLA in 5 sets on Wednesday. And then how about this? There are 4 unbeaten teams in the nation, right? We've got Wisconsin, Nebraska, Arizona State, and of course they're going to play Stanford this weekend. Do you know who the 4th one is?
Nope.
The Citadel.
Oh, yes. And Citadel has arms. The Citadel can score the ball. So if you've never heard of the Citadel, they've got some people down there that are hitting the ball off the floor, and they're doing some damage to the competition they play. I checked them out in the first and second weeks because I couldn't believe you had almost 18 kills per set early in the season. I don't care who you are. If you can score the ball like that, you're going to be pretty good.
All right, so now let's get to the last segment here, which is essentially the best matches of this upcoming week. We've talked about Texas, BYU, Washington State, Oregon. I'm also loving the Purdue-Nebraska matchup on Friday in West Lafayette. That's a chance for the Boilermakers to grab that deserving top 16 spot, at least in my mind. We've also got Arizona State, Stanford. How about Penn State, Minnesota on Saturday night? That could be another chance for one of those 2 teams to really prove themselves in the conference.
Well, this is Penn State's chance to prove they're real, because right now Minnesota's played the competition. Penn State hasn't. And even though Minnesota is maybe 50-50 playing competition, Penn State is unchallenged here. So if they don't do some damage to Minnesota, then Minnesota's going to keep a position above Penn State.
Florida versus Texas A&M Wednesday at 7 Eastern on ESPNU. That'll lead right up into Wisconsin, Ohio State at 9 o'clock on BTN. Louisville at Notre Dame. Maybe the Fighting Salima Rockwells have a little bit of a say. That's at the same time, 7 o'clock Eastern, right before Auburn, Arkansas. So Wednesday's a great night for volleyball. Washington State avoided the upset against Arizona last weekend. They're going to need one more obstacle as they take on Oregon State on Thursday before going to Oregon on Sunday. And then Houston, Kansas is a top 25 matchup in the Big 12 Friday night and Saturday night, 7:30 Eastern on Friday. And Baylor, Iowa State is a top 30 matchup on Sunday afternoon. So those are all of my top matchups this weekend, Mick. Anything else that we want to talk about before signing off towards the Erin Livingston interview?
Well, I just think one last thing. The middle of the Big 12, UCF, Iowa State, Houston, Kansas, that whole group in the middle is much, much improved and much better and could challenge for the top 25. The Big 12 conference could be the surprise conference if they don't beat each other up. Right now, it'll be interesting to see how they start this weekend and what happens.
All right, well, I'm excited to check that out. Stay tuned. This is going to be an awesome chat with the BYU outside, maybe the best player you've never heard of in college women's volleyball, Erin Livingston, coming up next. Joined now by the BYU outside hitter, Erin Livingston. And Erin, huge week coming up this week. We'll kind of save some of the Texas topics for a little bit, but I want you to give a little bit of an introduction because not a lot of people know about BYU. They don't really know about Whitney and Erin and some of the pieces that make up this puzzle. Is that something that you guys feel like is an advantage in a way to kind of slide under the radar for a lot of fans.
Yeah, we're a super great team. We have a really good culture here, have a lot of good key parts to our team, a lot of good players, and a lot of depth. So, yeah, it's just really fun to play here, and we're a good team.
So tell us about yourself, right? From California, why did you pick BYU? Was it something that you had kind of grown up as a kid wanting to play there?
Yeah, I BYU, once I started playing volleyball, it was definitely my top pick for school. I knew they were great at volleyball. Religion was a huge part for me, education, and so it was just all around a really good school that I wanted to play at. And when I came here on my visit and met with the girls and the coaches, it was just such a loving family culture. They were killing it in volleyball, and I really wanted to play here. So, yeah.
Tell me, when you found out that BYU was going to move to the Big 12 conference, was that something that, like, are you a volleyball fan? Do you kind of watch other teams? Do you watch Texas and Kansas and, Texas Tech, other teams like that throughout the season?
Yeah, it was really exciting. We loved the West Coast Conference, and there's so many great teams there. But we knew there were so many great teams in the Big 12 too, and so we were excited for that change and to just have different people to play. And
So here we go. I'm going to throw it to Mick. Mick's a Texas guy, but I want to ask you, when you think about going to Gregory Gym, now everyone really stresses about heading to Provo and playing at BYU and the atmosphere there. Do you feel like you've played in any gyms that might be as hostile as Gregory will be?
I don't know. I've never played there, and everybody tells me how crazy and fun it is and what a great environment it is. And, I've also heard it's a lot like the Smith Fieldhouse as well, just tons of fans. They're right up close to you. And so I'm excited for the environment.
Go ahead, Mick.
Well, you got Texas back to back. First of all, kind of unusual that two teams of this caliber are playing back to back. Do you have a special strategy for the first night? Are you guys gonna throw everything at them? Or are you gonna save the kitchen sink for the next night just in case? Do you have a strategy?
I love that. We always treat every game like the most important game on our schedule. And so both nights are going to be super important games, and we're just going to go out, show what we got, work hard, and play to the best of our abilities both nights.
And have you talked about Gregory Jim, or is that just kind of a something that you guys expect that you just need to play through and go after Texas, or is there a strategy for that kind of crowd that close?
Yeah, we try not to focus too much on the atmosphere of the gym. We try and focus on ourselves and what we need to do. Um, but I mean, we've heard that it's a great gym to play in. Our coaches have played in it. So it definitely has been mentioned, but we just focus on ourselves and what we got to do to play our best.
One last question. What's your favorite set, and how does your setter give you that ball most of the time?
Ooh, that's a great question. I feel like I love hitting line. That's one of my strengths, I feel like. And so I love when she pushes the set out to the pin and I'm able to hit the line, but that also opens up so many different shots as well. Um, and yeah, I'd probably say that's my favorite.
Does she set you tight, or does she set you off so that you can see more of the court?
Um, I would say a little bit more off, just so we
Mhm.
can go high, hit hard, um, have more range for sure.
All right, Daniel.
So yeah, I'm curious. I want to set the stage a little bit for fans, right? It's not like Erin kind of jumped onto this out of nowhere, right? You had over 4.5 kills per set last season and hit 300. Are there certain benchmarks that you want to get to as a personal player, stats wise or goal wise throughout a season?
Honestly, I have personal goals, I want to be an All-American. But mainly I just want to help this team win, play the best I can play so that we can win those games and hopefully win a national championship. So yeah, I have personal goals, but it's mainly the team goals of winning the Big 12 and winning a national championship.
All right, so we finally got a little bit of a crack there, Mick. So, Erin, you've kept this great composure, but I've got to ask, do you think you got snubbed a little bit? Because, I mean, hitting over 300 with 1,000 swings, 4.5 kills per set, that kind of feels like you should be on the All-American bubble last year, but I don't think I saw you get any real recognition. Do you feel like there's a little bit of a chip on your shoulder now?
Oh, you guys are nice. But, you know, I'm not too worried about that. What I care about is my team and, you know, like I said, helping this team win. And so I'm not too worried about that. But you guys are nice.
No,
But it'd be nice, right? It'd be nice.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, especially for a lot of the younger players watching, and you know, we try to make it out to be something big, but is revenge a factor ever? Because obviously you lose to Pittsburgh last year in the NCAA tournament. You got a chance to get revenge in the beginning of this year. Was that something that either Coach Olmstead had talked about or other captains around the locker room were kind of talking about, like, let's get our revenge on Pitt?
Yeah, I wouldn't say as much like revenge. We know they're a great team and we want to win as many games as possible. And obviously we lost to Pitt a couple times. And so that was a really exciting match on our schedule. Like I said, though, we always treat every game the same and the most important. So um, it was definitely a good feeling to get that win. And we played really well, and they also played really well, and they're a great team. So it was just an exciting moment for us for sure.
All right, so now another one mainly targeted towards like high school, middle school players. You know, we see so many, and we have so many of these big personalities come on this show, whether it be Cami Minor or Yassiana Presley or Logan Eggleston. But there has to be a certain role model for the quiet athletes, and you certainly seem like someone who keeps their head down and does their job and doesn't put themselves first. So, what pieces of advice would you give some of the more, uh, you know, play first, talk second kind of players out there?
Yeah, for sure. You know, grew up in club, just getting as much one-on-one work with coaches as possible and just getting in the gym, getting extra reps. Um, and so I would just say any chance that you can to get more reps, I would do because it has helped me so much. And just um, getting as much practice in and getting good reps as possible has helped me so much. So that's my advice. Work hard.
That's a good one. And I want to know, since you do watch other teams and you have played one of the surprise teams here this year, your only loss this year has come to Washington State. They're up there in the top 10 with you. Something that you see with the Cougars that maybe is going to bring a lot of fits to the Pac-12 this year, specifically about Washington State.
The Cougars as in them, right?
Exactly. That's why I had
Yeah.
to switch it up at the last second.
Yeah, yeah, they're a great team. It was really fun to play them. We learned a lot from that game and you know, they got a lot of returners, they got a lot of big players and I think just they're scrappy. They got a good offense and I think that's going to help them you know, in the future. So just their scrappiness and offense was really good.
Anything else from you, Mick?
No, just who's your favorite player to play against when you have to go out there and play against somebody? You know, when you're an elite player and you're elite because there are not many people can get 4.5 kills per set. I mean, that's a big load, and you carry that. But you also look and see other players that are doing that. Who is it that inspires you? Who do you want to go out and do battle with because you just love to see where you are and where they are and is there anybody there that comes to your mind that you really like to face?
Oh, that's a great question. Honestly, there's just a couple players I get really excited to play. Um, I trained with USA in the summer, and there was a couple girls there, um, like Kate Georgiadis, Lauren Bracena, like all those liberos I love playing against, and Lexi Rodriguez. You know, we don't have them in our conference, but you know, hopefully we get to play them. And they're just so scrappy, and it'd be fun to really hit against them. And, it's always fun seeing those girls on the other side of the court.
So what do you do if one of them digs you and then they yawn?
Oh my goodness, that would be kind of sad, but just kidding. Um, no, honestly, I'd be like, good job, you're a baller. But then I would, try to change up my swing and
Yeah.
trying to get a kill a different way.
All right, and last one for me here. And I will say, I want to give one quick shout out. You talk about your liberos, and I was on the broadcast this past weekend for Kansas against Texas Tech, and Reagan Burns, the Kansas libero. I'm sure you'll see her later in the year. I think you play everyone in the Big 12 conference. She had some of the most incredible highlight reel digs for a freshman. So that's someone that I think will be a fun matchup. Obviously, this upcoming weekend at Texas. So much talk is going to come around Coach Olmstead, and she's been so spotlight centric over the last 4 or 5 years with the rise of the program. I want you to peek behind the curtain a little bit, though, Erin. Give us 1 or 2 funny stories from Coach Olmstead.
Heather's awesome. I just love being coached by her. I think one of the funniest things that Heather does is whenever there's like a new dance move out, she always loves to do it, whip it out. I don't know if you guys heard of the gritty, but
That's
she loves
beyond me.
doing that. She loves doing that, and it's hilarious. And she's just so fun when she gets in that dancing mood. Yeah.
I think you're going to have to poke the social media manager over there and see if we can get a video on X or Twitter.
Seriously.
Heather doing the gritty. Erin,
That's what I'm saying.
Thank you so much for joining us. Good luck this weekend in Austin.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. For Erin, Mick, I'm Daniel, and this is 6 Rotations.